All right. Hello and welcome back to another Academy episode here with a good friend, Academy Arena United. Skipped last week, just some life things and all of that, but it's been busy, more games happening, the youth fully under just going and playing now. We've got the transfer window ended. So there's a number of things we want to talk about, from results to a lot of the discourse around given United being short in the team and the first team. Is it the right time to start throwing youth players in? Should we wait on development? So a lot to talk about today. First of all, how's it going?
Doing very well. I bet your subscribers missed me so much last week.
Oh yeah, they did. They did. No,
Yeah.
people have been asking for the review. People
Oh, that's
definitely
good. That's
like
good to
it. So
hear.
I'm happy to keep it up through the rest of the season. And I think right now,
Great.
especially, it's kind of like, people are always looking like whenever we're short, it's the obvious kind of discord that comes up. Like, should we just look
Yeah,
to the academy and see if Carrington can solve our problems for us? Because they have so many times in the past.
you're right.
So it's good times for that. So yeah, just getting into it. There's been some mixed results in the last few weeks,
Mm.
right? On the fronts of the academy teams. What's happened?
Yeah, it's actually been quite unfamiliar as someone that's watched the academy, oh, particularly the under 18s then for the amount that I have, is that we've actually lost two games in a row. I mean, we've lost against City in the league, and then we played West
Mm,
Ham in the Premier League Cup, and we drew that game sort of in normal time, but went on to penalties and lost that. So
yeah.
not technically not two losses in a row, but you know we're out of the competition. So technically speaking, we have lost, and like I said, that's kind of unfamiliar territory for the under 18s. Usually the standards are so high that you lose one game, okay, you go on and win the next five, six, seven, eight, right? That's kind of the standards that they've
Yes.
set this season, and we'll go on and talk about the results specifically in a moment. But I just wanted to kind of say that it's okay for them to lose those games. Obviously it's disappointing, but the one thing that I love about youth football is that you can always turn these losses into positives, and I think it's harder to do that at first team level, right?
Yes.
You never really think like that, but and we'll go into sort of the details within those losses, why these sort of games are important. But like I said to you, I think a couple of episodes ago, that the Nick Cox, the academy director, said that if we're winning all the time, we're doing something wrong. And I know that
Right.
sounds kind of like counterproductive, almost like, of course you want to be winning, um, but if you're constantly exposed to environments where you're winning the game comfortably, you're not necessarily learning. And I think, especially from the last two results against City and against West Ham in the Premier League Cup, the players would have learned a lot more from those games than beating Leeds 9-0, for example, like we did a couple of months back. So it's disappointing, but like I said, the purpose of the academy is to to develop players, and I think without these kind of results, you don't sort of have those opportunities for players to grow in those kind of scenarios. So yeah, like I said, disappointing. So we'll go to the City game first. Did you manage to catch any of the highlights from that game, or?
I saw a few of the
Mhm.
highlights, but not a lot.
Yeah,
So
so City obviously won 4-0,
yeah.
and they're now, I believe they are. You'll have to fact check me on this because I've just it's just lost me. I believe so. So I think they're 4 points ahead of us, but we have
Right.
two games in
Pull this up.
hand. Just double check
Yeah,
that. But I
they're
think
37 points to 33, but they've played two more. So
that's it. Yeah. So
technically,
4 points ahead with
United
two
there
games in
could
hand.
still jump them if
Yeah.
with a couple wins,
So
right?
it was the first loss of the season for under 18s in the
Yes,
league.
I see that. Wow.
So if you were to ask like 100 people about the game, I would say
Yeah.
60 people would say to you that City dominated us and controlled the game completely and outplayed us, and then 40 probably would say that the scoreline didn't reflect the performance from both
Sure.
teams, and that it was slightly flattering to City. And I kind of was in that camp, and I kind of said that after the game, and sort of got a bit of pushback on that. But I've rewatched the game, and I'm even more concretely in that camp now, because I would accept that City did a really good job at sort of nullifying us in terms of
Yeah.
how we like to play football. Like the under 18s have like 60, 70, 80% possession most games.
Hmm.
And I think when you get so used to watching them in those kind of scenario, when you get so used to watching them play like that or play a certain way, when you don't see them play that way, I think it stands out.
Yeah,
And
sure.
City did a really good job of that in terms of their pressing. They really, really did well in the midfield battle. Um, I was quite disappointed with sort of the midfield and the kind of unwillingness to get on the ball. I think that was something that I noticed, and something that Adam Lawrence said. You could see it on the side when you watch the under 18s. Obviously,
Mm.
because of the lack of kind of people that are there, you can hear the manager speak a lot, and that's one of the things that Adam Lawrence, the under 18s manager, was kind of shouting at the players, was is that particularly shouting at Jace Fitzgerald, was telling him, you need to call for the ball, you need to get on the ball more.
Mm.
And I think that's something that City did really well, was pressing through the middle of the park, and that's actually how they got their first goal. But we had spells throughout the game. You can't deny that. And of course, the first goal was through an unforced error, and that was actually a period in the game where we were starting to take control of the ball more and press up a little bit more. The line started to creep up, and City kind of camped in a little bit. And there was also an opportunity in the first half where Scanlon hit the post, and Chido did really, really well to play the ball across the box. And if Scanlon slots that in, that's 1-0, and the game looks
Right.
entirely different, right?
Yeah.
And we concede a minute into the second half. That just throws the plans completely away there.
Yep. Mhm.
And even after going 2-0 down, we should have scored 2 or 3 goals. Chido had a complete sitter of a header, and you would expect him to score it 99 times out of 100. He put
Yep.
that wide. We had a goal disallowed for offside, and then we also had a shot off the line as well. So there were
Mm.
definitely chances there for us to get back in the game, and it was kind of one of those days. And I'm not trying to sit here and say to you that City didn't deserve the win. I just think that we did well in parts throughout the game, and I think the scoreline flattered them a little bit, but. Of course, disappointing result, but like I said, like you said to me just now, we've got games in hand, so there's a chance for us to sort of get that first place position. If we win those games in hand, we've got Liverpool on the weekends, and Liverpool are
Mm.
sort of lower down in the league. You'd expect Liverpool to be doing quite well, given
Oh, they're near the
sort of
bottom now. Yeah, 12th.
yeah, they're really down the bottom, but they did beat Chelsea recently.
Mm.
Um, so you know, and the one thing that I'd say is that we need players back. We really, really need players back. Um, we've got 10 injuries at the moment with under 18s, and injuries
Trinchieri
that
is still injured, right? Is he's
yeah, Bianchiri's injured,
Chieri?
Ibragimov's injured, Lacey's injured,
Got it. Yeah.
Mantato's injured, um, Lusail, the guy from Crystal Palace that we signed in the
Right.
summer, he's injured,
These
and
are
we've
all
got
pretty top talents at the under teens level, huh?
100%. And then we've
Yeah.
got Zach Bauman, Jacob Devaney, James Overy, the guy that we signed from Australia. He's been injured. He
Wow.
hasn't played a single game this season. So
Mm.
the squad is really struggling at the moment in terms
I
of
see.
kind of the attacking threat. And that was what I noticed in that game, was that the ball, we were doing really well to beat City's press through the fullbacks. Amass and Camerson were doing quite well to beat the press, but when we were getting the ball out to the wide areas, we didn't quite have that quality.
Mm.
Victor Musa was playing right wing, and he's usually a striker. Um,
Okay.
so it's an unfamiliar position for him, and he struggled, and options off the bench were really, really slim. I think we had one attacker, and that was Louis Bradbury, and he was, he's a 16-year-old. So the depth isn't quite there at the moment, and I'm just kind of slightly concerned for the games coming up. Is that going to haunt us coming to the end of the season? But again, like I said to you just now, we can use these moments
Yeah.
as learning opportunities for the players. There are going to
Yeah.
be times when they become first teamers, that wherever team they play for, whether it be United or whoever, it's going to be times in their careers where they have to play out of position, or there's going to be an injury crisis and they have to do a job in a certain place or a certain position, and have to deal with that as well. So these are all, again, good learning opportunities. Of course,
Right.
you'd like the players back from injury, but um, there are learning opportunities from these kind of scenarios.
For sure. Well, and it's just interesting because thinking about it, even talking about losses and being demonstrative and learning experience and such, you could argue to a little bit of a degree that Ruben Amorim has, and in terms of the senior first team, has been trying to make that point as well about where the first team is at, which is that for such a long time it's been playing a certain way, and it would be very easy to slip into a comfort zone even at the senior level and
Mm,
say let's go back deep block hit the balls in transition, play this way because we can win games. But are we learning by doing that to play a different, more dominating style that he wants as a manager for the first team? And obviously, at the youth levels, it's even more so. It's important,
Mhm.
not just to chase the result every game, but you're trying to learn something. Even obviously the scales on the first team winning is higher, but on
Yeah, of
at the
course.
academy level, it really does flip the other way, where the most important thing is you're learning, because winning all the time without actually learning to play the way you want to play and developing these skills would be somewhat pointless at the end of the day, right?
Exactly. And not to sort of talk about it for too long, but if you look at Arsenal's academy, they're
Mm,
not really an academy that's known for winning. They've
right.
never they're not sort of synonymous with that, in particularly in recent years. But if you look at the players that they produced, if you just go by the last few years, Saka, Emil Smith Rowe,
Mm,
they're now promoting Nwaneri, Miles Lewis Skelly, and they've got Max
right.
Dowman as well. This 14-year-old who's been training with the first team, and also Chido as well.
Right.
Chido
Yeah.
was coming to us. So, and they're not synonymous with winning trophies and winning league titles and stuff, but they're constantly producing. So it's that fine balance of,
Yes.
what do you want? Do you want players to get better and develop? By being put in different scenarios, or do you want them to just win every game and win every
Right.
title? So there's definitely a balance to be had. Then I think we've kind of touched on that a little bit in previous
Yep.
episodes. But yeah, so obviously disappointing loss to City, and then a perfect opportunity to bounce back then in the Premier League Cup. So we played West Ham in the quarterfinals. Now, going into this game, I was quite confident. I thought, um, every time this under-18s team has a setback, they tend to respond really well.
Mm,
Um, but again, just there was that slight bit of doubt before the game. I'm just thinking, right, can we just get a couple more players back? Can we just? It
right.
was for me that game, because West Ham aren't doing too great at the moment.
Yeah.
They've obviously got good players, but in terms of as a squad, not quite as good as they used to be. They won the FA Youth Cup a couple of seasons ago, but not quite at those levels yet. So I was kind of confident going into the game. And when I saw Chido wasn't in the lineup, and when I saw that we had no players back from injury, I just thought, "Ooh, this could be a difficult one today." And let's just
Yeah.
hope we grind out. Let's just hope we grind out the result. That was kind of my kind of where I was at mentally,
Mm,
because on the bench as well, we had a goalkeeper, two defenders, um, Jariah Shah, who's an under-16s player, who's kind of like a right back slash midfielder, and he's not played a single minute of under-18s football. And then there was Louis Bradbury, who's not played hardly any minutes for under 18s. He's a striker. So there's only one attacker on the bench that we could
mm,
really use. And I just thought, if we go a goal down here, or if we start sort of losing, and we need some impact off the bench, we've not got much to pick from.
sure.
So we went one goal up, and I sort of thought, right, you know, that they started really, really well, dominating the ball, dominating the possession, what we expect from the under 18s, sort of how they usually play.
Yeah.
Fullbacks really high, pinning the wingers in, just sort
Mm,
of exactly what I'm used to. And then for some reason after the goal, just sat back and completely
mm,
lost control of the game. And West Ham sort of had a really good spell for about 20 minutes and eventually got their goal just before half time. And then, almost in exact circumstance, the City game, we conceded a minute after the second half restart. And
mm.
I was just thinking, am I watching the first team here?
Right. Yeah.
Because
Exactly.
that's kind of
How
something
many
that we've
times have we
expected
done
from you.
that? Yeah.
Yeah, and it was just like, gosh, that's interesting, to do that two games in a row, just completely uncharacteristic for under 18s. So we went 2-1 down, and I thought, oh, here we go. But Scanlon got a goal back, 2-2, and at that point, then at 2-2, we really, really should have gone on to win the game. We had so many chances to kill that game off in sort of the full 90 minutes. We didn't. And similar to the City game, right? We had plenty of chances, just weren't clinical enough in those final
Right.
actions. Jace Fitzgerald went through on goal with a player alongside him, just completely the whole pitch to run into. No defenders. West Ham had pushed all their players up, but the you might have seen it. It was gone viral recently on social media, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But the West Ham player runs like 30, 40 yards and wins the ball back. And we hit the post a couple of times, and just, yeah, we really should have killed the game off at that point. Um, We didn't. It went to extra time, went to penalties, and unfortunately we lost on penalties. But that's just, it is what it is, right? And
Yes.
again, unfortunately, Louis Bradley, 16-year-old, missed a penalty. A really
Yeah.
difficult moment for him. But again, like I said on my social medias, took courage for him to step up and take that penalty. Okay, he missed,
Right. Yes.
but that will be a great learning experience for him. He can use that and harness that in his career. Obviously
Yep.
not to the same degree, right? But if you look at someone like Saka, right, who missed the World Cup,
Yeah.
I mean, what's his penalty ratio been like after that moment? It's been pretty insane, right? So he's been able
Yep.
to harness a difficult moment in his career and use that. And he's one of the best penalty kick takers in the world right now. And just drawing comparisons along that is that in these difficult moments, players can use that to develop themselves and work on those things. So we're out the PL Cup, and it was really disappointing because a lot of the big hitters in that tournament are out. So I was kind of expecting us to go on to win that, but like I said again, just the injuries are killing us, and I just hope that in the coming games, because we've got Liverpool and Chelsea coming up next,
Yep.
and Chelsea in the FA Youth Cup, and that will be a really, really juicy game. But just hoping that we have a couple of players back, cross fingers, because the FA Youth Cup is obviously, as you probably know, the biggest youth competition in the country,
Yeah.
and that's the one
Yes.
we're the club that's won the most. It's steeped in our history. That's the most important one, and I would love for us to win that. City won it last year. And City have got, like I said to you a couple of episodes ago, maybe it was last episode or the episode before, I think we're going to have to go unbeaten in the league to win the league this season. Obviously,
Yes.
they beat
Yep.
us. Their under 18 side is really, really strong, but I do think with everyone fit, we could definitely beat them. I think we're the only team, personally. I think we're the only team with a fully fit squad that could beat them this year in the FA Youth Cup. So hopefully we've got players back, get through
Yep.
against Chelsea. And have you seen who we're going to play if we beat Chelsea? Who would play in the next round there for Youth Cup? Have you seen?
No, who was that? Let me see. Hold on. I
I'll, I'll
remember.
let I'll let you
Let me look
find
for it.
out.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me look.
So if you can't see it,
So
I'll
Chelsea,
I'll,
and then
I'll give you a hint.
it would be Arsenal, wouldn't it?
Yeah. So
Yeah, it would be
that would be
Arsenal.
quite juicy, right?
Yes.
For Chido,
Yeah. Yeah.
a return.
That
That
would
would
be
be quite
good.
interesting. Yeah.
Do you think he'll still be
So
there? Because you mentioned he wasn't there for the cup, and of course he was playing, if I'm not mistaken, with the other 21s recently in the
yeah.
last
So
couple of
someone
weeks.
else asked me this recently. I think he would. I think historically the FA Youth Cup is considered the be all and end all of youth competitions, and it's the one that you play your best players in, no matter what. I think the
Okay.
only scenario where you don't is, for example, Noah Neary for Arsenal, for example, he's 17. He could still play in the FA Youth Cup for Arsenal, but
Right.
there's no point for him at the moment because he's a regular first teamer. He's playing
Yeah.
regularly for the first team, whereas Chido's not at that stage yet. He's not had his
He's still
debut.
between under 21s and 18, so you might as well play in that. Yeah. That makes
Exactly, and
sense.
the year after that we won it, so the year that Kobe and Garnacho were in the FA Youth Cup winning team, Kobe could have played the following season,
Right.
but I think that he didn't play in any of the games, and I think that's just because he'd already achieved the goal of
Right.
winning it,
Yeah.
and he was starting to be introduced into that first team setup. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think he will play. I think he will
Okay.
play. Like
Makes
I said,
sense. It's only
yeah,
March, right? So it's like a month away to Arsenal. So, it's unlikely he becomes in this, though we'll talk about in a minute, some like established first teamer in the next 30 days or something
a
like
lot would
that.
have to change, wouldn't it? A lot would have to
Yeah.
change.
Yeah. hmm
Um,
And
but
the
I think you wanted to
21s
talk about
then.
Chido, right?
Yeah, well, I want to, yeah, because he's been playing with the 21s, and obviously results wise with them, it's even less, you know, important, I guess, because as we've kind of touched on many times, it's lineup wise, it's a lot more chaotic there. Players in, players out. Um, it's a bit different than it has been
Yeah,
for a while, where the under 18s have been a bit more stable. But so Cheeto, we'll get into discussing about him or something with the first team. But how's he been doing at the under 21s since the step up? It seems like I've seen some highlights and moments where it seems like obviously not as prolific as at the under
yeah,
18s where he's getting 2-3 goals a game sometimes, but he's still he's making a step up pretty smoothly, it seems.
yeah. So just on him and kind of referencing it quickly back to the City game.
Yep.
I really, really have noticed that there's a target on his back, 100%. Um,
Yeah.
because there's a lot of hype around his name, right?
Yep.
Everyone knows who he is. Everyone knows how many goals he scored. You know, I actually last night went on and looked at his 32 goal season for Arsenal. I watched
Mm.
all the clips from that season, and you know he scored 7 goals in one game. So
Yeah.
practically everyone knows about him. And after that City game, I thought he played really well. So this is under 18s now. So I thought he played really well. There was um, but there was a lot of discourse online after the game saying that he'd been pocketed and stuff,
Mm.
you know, and just completely not true. And I put together a video. If people want to go and watch it, it's on my Twitter. I put together a video of the clips of him from that game, and he should have scored 2 or 3 goals that game. You know,
Mm.
if he was sort of had his finishing boots on that game, he'd have come away with a hat trick,
Interesting.
like we usually see him do. So
Yeah.
I definitely think there's something like this agenda against him, and particularly from Arsenal fans, right? They're still salty about it. And
Of
funnily
course.
enough, that same weekend, who did Arsenal play? Who did Arsenal's first team play? They played City. Who scored in that
Yeah.
game? Miles Lewis-Skelly, Ethan Nwaneri, and all you saw on social media is Chido Obi's playing under 18s football while his age mates are playing for the first
Yeah.
team. Why did he
Yeah.
leave? So there's definitely going to be that target on his back
Sure.
throughout his youth career, because anytime he plays against under 21s teams, under 18s teams, you know, in these kind of competitions, it's just going to be like people will certainly start mocking him and say that, well, you know, the players that you played with are now playing for the first team.
Yeah,
So
they were trying to make the
that's
comparison. Yeah.
just something I noticed. In terms of how he's doing for the 21s, I think I kind of talked about it in the last episode. Is I've been really, really impressed, like really impressed.
Nice.
And um, so I think the last time we spoke, he'd played for the 21s against Nordirland, I think they're called, the
Yeah, I came
Danish
on as a
team.
sub, I think, that game, like, for a half or something like that, if I'm not
So
mistaken.
he scored in that game. Didn't
Yeah.
have much to do, but you know he scored in that game, and he played against Oldham's first team in
Okay.
the National League Cup for the
Mm.
21s.
Okay.
So against first team opposition, obviously National League sides have to factor that in. But one thing that you notice is physically, you know, he matches up to pretty much any centre back that he plays against, which is a good start, right? And
Yep.
the one thing that I've been super impressed with about him is the overall game that's sort of outside the box. I actually posted a compilation of his performance against Oldham, and so many scenarios where you know he's skipping past the player with quick feet, running with the ball. Um, just yeah, really really impressed with kind of like his overall game, and I'm a bit hesitant to say that it's developed loads since joining United, because
Right.
I haven't been able to watch his full 90 minutes for Arsenal, like all the 90 minutes that he played for
Yeah.
Arsenal. So because when he first joined, he was quite sloppy in those kind of areas in terms of
Sure.
back to goal play, linking with other teammates, dribbling, carrying the ball. Wasn't quite there. You couldn't didn't look very clean. But I've also got to factor in that when he joined, he hadn't played football for like a couple of months, 3 months, because of the fact
Mm.
that the
Yeah.
transfer was going through. So I don't know whether or not when in those first months that he was with us, so that was just general rustiness, and the player that we're seeing now is the player that we saw at Arsenal, just
Right.
slightly better. So I can't say conclusively, but what I would say is that to anyone that is not watching him, I would say that he is he does look like a proper player, you know. And a lot of people make the comparisons with Isak,
Mm.
and I would kind of agree with those comparisons. If you go watch Isak
Interesting.
before he joined Dortmund, it does look very similar stylistically to Isak. You know, he's got that kind of lanky frame, the way he moves with his
Right.
body, the quick feet, um, the finishing technique, the shooting technique is quite similar. It does look quite similar. So if you want to go and watch any compilations, go on my Twitter. I've posted some from the games,
Cool.
but yeah, really impressed with him. Really, really impressed.
Very nice. Good. Well, and then, in that, obviously, there's a lot of call at the moment, a lot of interesting discussion around United fans in general, right? Because everybody's been very excited by the idea of Chido and him coming in from Arsenal, and he's big and he's this prolific youth goal scorer. And at the moment, ending the January window, everybody knows, United weren't able, bringing into the senior team another attacker, and we've had these issues, and Marcus Rashford has gone out, and all of that, and really at the core of it is Hoyland and Xerxes underperforming so much from a
Yeah.
scoring perspective that United just can't get goals. And so obviously the discourse turns to, not unreasonably so, can we get Chido in there? And I will talk a little more in general about whether it's a good idea on academy players, but honestly, um, I mean, what are your thoughts on him specifically? Like how just it's obviously purely opinion based about whether he could actually play in the Premier League, from a physical level for a game, or even in a
Yeah.
cup game or Europa game, and just give it a go and see what happens. What do you think about it yourself?
Just off of kind of the short amount that I've watched him play since joining. Now, I am going to say that I didn't watch him play for Arsenal. I was aware of him at the time. I seen all his goals, because obviously who hasn't, right?
Right.
He was, all over social media during that period for the amount of goals that he was scoring. But based on the times that I've watched him play, and obviously I always watch the games back 2 or 3 times because I'm usually making analysis or video compilations
Hmm.
of players. So I'm watching the games 2 or 3 times, and that really does give you a different perspective as well.
Yep.
And for me, just off of my opinion, this is for me a guaranteed first teamer. That's my view on it.
Sure.
I don't think
That's
this
what
is
he's gonna
someone that
get.
we're going
Yeah.
to. I don't think this is going to be someone that we're going to loan out. I
Yeah.
think this is someone that's eventually, like I said to you, I think in the last episode, I think he'll get his debut by the end of the season. Um, but of course, like I said, I'm always quite reserved with these sort of things. Um, I did post the other day on my social media that the ideal development, and Nick Cox has spoken about this, is exposing academy players to environments that look as similar as possible to the first team. And I kind of made a list of what those might look like. So you've got first team training, right? There's been kind of like speculative reports on him being in first team training, right? There's been, I think the Manchester Evening News have said that he's been a part of first team training, but it's been on days where the squad have been this, it's like the injured players and like kind of like the fringe players
Right. Yeah.
and kind of like a collective of academy players. He's not been pictured ever in first team training as far as I'm aware, and I've not been
Right.
told any information as to whether he has been in first team training. It's just that one article I think from the men saying that
Yeah.
he's been a part of it, but it's been when most of the squad aren't there. So first
Yeah.
team training, it could be
Recovery days.
included in
Yeah.
first team squads. So going with the squad to away grounds, to the home grounds, having an idea of what the atmosphere feels like in the stadiums, traveling with the team, understanding what that's like. Um, it could be playing in high pressure academy games. It could be playing at Old Trafford for the academy. He's done that already. Um, it could be things like going on loan or playing against senior opposition. All of these things as a collective, that's kind of what you want, is that you want to make as many scenarios as possible that look like the first team so that when they come into that environment, it's not kind of like this big shock. And he's not quite ticked all those boxes yet, but like I spoke to you before we started recording, is that you can get those scenarios like Marcus Rashford where they might not necessarily have gone on that kind of routine path of, right, we're going to start here and we're going to finish here, and once you've done all that, we're then going to start
Yeah.
playing you. Rashford was kind of just thrown in, and
Yep.
we are kind of like dangerously close to that kind of period or that potentially happening, right? Like I said to you just
Yes.
now before we
Yeah.
start recording, if Hoyland and Xerxes get injured, which could happen, right? It could happen.
Yeah.
Stranger things have happened. Who have we got left?
Yeah.
So that scenario is there, and you know, I do think having watched him as well, and just kind of picking up on, look, I don't want to be a body language expert or anything like that, right?
Yep.
I'm not into that kind of stuff, but he does look like someone that is able to cope with that, and I don't think he would have made the move to United had he not had that kind of mindset already.
Yeah.
Do you get what I'm trying to say?
I do agree. I do understand. Yes.
There's a mental
Yeah,
resilience
like
is
he could
required.
he feels like he could do it, basically, is part of the
100%.
reason that he would be, yeah, coming to United.
100%. He's done that not to think, right, I'm just going to join United because I support them and it's going
Yeah.
to be fun to play in their academy and I'm going to get chucked out on loan. He made that move calculated because he knows I'm going to play for the first team and I'm going to do it
Yeah,
soon. So I do get that vibe from him. So yeah, for me, I'd like to see him on the bench in the
sure.
FA Cup. I would
Yeah,
personally.
why
I
not?
think um, you know, and one thing that I did speak to you about a little bit as well is that the best players don't tend to spend too long in that
Right.
21s environment.
Well, that was
Like,
the other point, that almost ties into that thing about losses. It's like if you're just sitting in the under 21s scoring goals for the under 18s and you're scoring goals for ages and ages, that's why a lot of the top scorers, never weren't actually didn't turn into much because they were there for too long,
hmm
essentially, and a lot of times because they weren't ready to step up. And so they
mm,
stayed there too long comparatively. So it's that interesting balance, and it kind of makes sense. He's already moving up into the under 21s pretty regularly, and it's like that's pretty quick. So how long until the bench, and then it's under 21s and the bench, and then it's actually making a first team sub appearance and a random under 21s appearance here or there, and then it's full
yeah,
time in the first team. And that transition doesn't really take years and years, right? If it's a player who's really going to make it, it often is a little bit quicker than we think.
yeah, and it's interesting what you said there about transferring. And when you're looking at players in the academy, it's you're also factoring in how transferable are their skills
Yeah.
into the first team. You want to look at that. So if I look at Chido's game, what can he transfer from academy football into first team football? And that kind of that kind of that can be quite difficult. If you look
Yeah.
at someone like Garnacho, for example, now people have got split opinions on Garnacho. Let's just factor in his first season, right?
Mhm.
His first season when he broke through. So, well, not the debut season because I think he played a couple of games, right? He had his debut against Chelsea, and I think he came on as a sub, didn't he, against Crystal Palace on the last day?
Yeah,
So let's
yeah.
ignore that. The season where he had 49 on his back, um, and he scored that goal in the Europa League and that kind of his breakout season, right? If you look at that season, he was so good 1v1 against academy fullbacks and could blitz players for pace.
Yes.
And he was good at carrying the ball and these sort of things. Not the cleanest technique, and I think that's still kind of the case now with his dribbling
Yeah.
style and his running style. Not kind of the cleanest, but effective. You weren't quite sure whether or not he could transfer that into first team football, and it was kind of
Yep.
like not kind of sure. And I think especially in that second season that he was with us, he did. You could see that he did transfer those sort of skills.
Yep.
Struggling a bit at the moment, but referring it back to Chido, it's about factoring in, right? Can what I'm watching right now for him watching for the under 18s, the 21s, can he do that for the first team? And it's a really difficult one to decide.
Yeah.
It's
Hmm.
I don't want to say guesswork, but the the material that we've got as fans is so limited versus what the coaches and the staff will have, right? All we watch is the 90 minutes of them playing on the weekend. They've got training drills, shooting drills, all these sort of running. They've got running data,
Yeah.
all this sort of stuff that we don't have access to. So for us as fans, it's kind of guesswork, right? I would say, physically, he's I think he's 6'4". He's got a good frame. He's quite quick. He's not the quickest players, but he's quite quick. He's shown in recent weeks that he can carry the ball. He's got good feet. His finishing is exceptional. Like that's
Mhm.
by far his strongest suit, I would say.
Yes.
He's not quite replicated the form from Arsenal. His finishing from Arsenal was just ridiculous. Like, almost finishing every shot that he had. But I
Yep.
think what we're seeing now is just a leveling out of that now. Like what he was doing before was just
But it's still very good. Yeah. Yep.
100%, yeah. And one thing that I love about him as well is that, and I wish Hoyland did this more and Zirkzee did this more, is that they don't look like strikers sometimes, and they don't look like they want to score. Which
Yeah, they
do,
gotta
do you know
wait
what I
for
mean?
the
Like,
perfect opportunity instead of like, "I'm gonna go get the ball to the goal and shoot," like, because
yeah,
it is an interesting dynamic of this is that one of the major things missing from both strikers in the first team is they often, like, don't shoot. They just don't shoot enough, and it's like, you have this weird balance where you've got players where Garnacho at times, maybe it's to his credit, maybe not, but at times wants to shoot too much, as a winger, and he just shoot, 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 shoot. But then you look at it and it's like, the alternative is you get someone like Hoyland who like just won't shoot all game. Even when he
Mm,
touches it, he doesn't look like he's trying to get to the goal to shoot. Xerxes the same thing, and will lay it off, will do all these things, but they don't look like they want to shoot. And I have noticed that in any of the times I watch Chido, which you do want from your striker, that their first instinct is, can I get to the goal and shoot? Can I get to the goal and just get a shot off? Because sometimes you need that, because it can carry you through ups and downs in the team and in chances being created for you, that you have that instinct to just do it yourself. And there's a balance, obviously, but I have
100%.
noticed that with him, obviously, to have the kind of goal record he has, you have to have that too. But I have noticed that with him, and it is something extremely lacking from the
Yeah.
strikers in the first team.
If you look back at a lot of our greatest moments in our club's history in terms of under Sir Alex Ferguson's era,
Yeah.
a lot of our most famous goals and goals in important moments just come from players trying things. Just it might not be the optimal play at the time, but just trying something. And
Yes.
for example, Hoyland might take a shot and it deflects and parries out to someone, and then you get a chance to score. Just trying these sort of things, and that's something that I like from Chido is kind of like that self belief that give me the ball, I'm going to shoot, I'm going to score. And sometimes, from what I have noticed in some games, he's done that a bit too much.
Yep.
But I'd rather my striker shoot more than not at all. So,
Yeah.
like I said, it's difficult even for someone like me who obviously, like I said, watches games back 2 or 3 times, does
Yeah.
does video compilations, for honing in on kind of well, what is he good at, what is he not good at, where is he improving. It's still difficult for me to kind of decipher whether or not it's the best kind of time for him. Like I said, I'd like to see him on the bench. I don't want to see no scenarios personally where we've got 2 keepers on the bench. I've always said this.
Yeah.
I've always said this. Even if you don't feel like someone's ready, put them on the bench and allow them to experience what it's like to walk out Old
Yep.
Trafford as a sub. You know what I mean? And
Yep.
maybe you're
Yep.
never going to actually play them, but that's kind of
It'd
that's
be
kind
good to see
and
that. Yeah.
yeah, and I appreciate what people say is this is not the right environment to bring players into. I totally get that. I kind of I would agree with that as well. But even if you look at Cobby's introduction to the first team, I was telling you earlier on about
Mm.
the ideal youth development, the kind of you start here and you move
Yep.
up there. Cobby was like a perfect example of like the slow progression. It was under
Yep.
18s football, under 21s football, first
Yep.
team football, but it was done in such a way where it wasn't like, right, you're playing under 18s football and then 2 months later you're starting for
Yeah.
the first team. There was kind of like the slow progression. So what I'd like to see over the next few months is that kind of he's introduced to the first team training, maybe in a couple of squads, maybe doesn't come on, but
Yep.
understands what it feels like to be around the first team environment. And then maybe towards the end of the season, give him a chance. That's what I would say with him. That'd be my
Makes
kind of,
sense.
if I could decide, right? But it's not up to me.
Yeah.
There are people who get paid to do this sort of stuff that know a lot more about this than me. So I'm going to let them decide. But
Yeah.
if it was up to me, yeah, I would include him in the squad. On it's Friday, right? The first team game.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Tomorrow. Yeah.
So the 21s play on Friday against Tottenham.
So I guess we'll
So
know, huh? Because they'll probably
yeah,
be
well,
before they'll play earlier, right? Than
yeah.
the
So
first
so
team usually.
I'm going to hazard as a guess to say that he won't be in the first team squad and he'll play that 21s game because we have no other strikers.
Fair.
Biancheri's
Yeah.
injured and Wheatley's gone out on
Right.
loan. Hugel's on loan, so I
Yeah.
think he will
Mm.
play. So to put a bit of a downer on it at the end, I don't think he'll be included, but I'd like to see
Fair
it
enough.
soon. I really would. I really would.
Yeah.
I'm really impressed with how he's coming along, and I do think he's going to be someone that we can use as an option going forward. I really do.
Yeah, I hope so, and it does seem like that's the track for him as well. And what do you think then? Another player in a similar, not the same, but to some degree similar. 18 years old. Right? Is he, and signed recently? Definitely on a bit of the track to be intended for the first team, which is Kone. Um,
Yeah, just to
He'd
19.
been injured. Yeah, just turned 19, and he'd been
Yeah.
injured, and I wonder if he hadn't been injured, would he had already made the squad in the first team if we'd seen more of him. Just because of why he was signed. He wasn't signed like, and again, we know this, he wasn't really signed like an academy kid, just like as we can see, Aiden Heaven here is right into the first team, similar age, and he's it's already been said he's going to be right into the first team, squad and all of that. And couldn't come at a better time to some degree, given the injury
Mm,
problems that we're having. And then there's like Diego Leon, who hasn't joined yet, of course, but he will come into the first team very likely too when he joins in summer, same
mm,
age. And we've made a number of these signings, and so it gives the implication that Kone, they want to give him time to settle, but he's kind of intended to get in towards the first team this season as well. How has he been doing? Obviously we hadn't seen much of him before, but it seems like it's
mm.
been getting better and better every week as well for him.
Yeah. So the last video that we did together was the day of that he played against Nordirland, the
Yes.
Danish team. And I think he came off about the 70th minute that game, and I kind of spoke to you about and said that he played okay,
Yeah.
nothing too great, but starting to play some more game time. Coming off as a sub later on in the
Yep.
game, and it's interesting what Travis Binion, the 21s coach, said after that game. He said he's a good player, he's going to be a very good player, but he's not even fitter than his teammates, let alone
Mm,
the opposition, and let alone
interesting.
being fit enough to play for the first team. So he brought that up as a point that he needs to adapt physically, and get his fitness up. And he also spoke about, it's been an adaptation period for him in terms of
Yeah.
settling into Manchester, the language, all this sort of stuff. So that I think that's what's going on at the moment, is kind of like developing his fitness, developing him into Manchester and the culture of the UK, of the United Kingdom, all this sort of stuff. Once that's done, we might see him. And it's interesting. So the game against Oldham, the game that we spoke about just now, with Chido played quite well in. It was his first 90 minutes, Seko Kone's first 90 minutes that he played, first
Mm,
full game. He didn't come off. And it's strange, in such a short period of time, the levels from the Nordjylland game to the Oldham game, of course, whether or not you think Oldham's first team are better than Nordjylland's under 21s team, that's up to you. But the levels
right.
that he showed in comparison to those two games in such a short space of time, in terms of athletically and physically, it was miles ahead in that Oldham
Mm,
game, miles,
interesting.
miles ahead. And I said to you in the last video that I thought I think he plays a lot like Kante. And I don't want to. I think black players unfortunately get racially profiled a lot, and I think
Sure.
sometimes
Yeah.
you see a black player and people just immediately assume, without they play nothing alike, right? And
Yeah.
I actually posted a compilation of his performance on my Instagram, and all I saw was comments. Paul Pogba, Paul
Right.
Pogba. This is next Paul Pogba, and they play nothing alike, right?
Unfortunately,
Paul,
yes. I know what
yeah,
you mean.
yeah.
Yeah.
Paul was much taller, lankier legs, longer strides, exceptional in tight spaces, extremely skillful, could score from range. They're just not the same.
Mhm.
Kante for me is kind of like a comparison that I would kind of endorse. And I think some
Yeah.
people have said Naby Keita when he was at Leipzig, but kind of like this player that can play as a six, can sit there, can scan well, pick up the ball from the centre backs when needed, off the ball exceptional in terms of high percentage in his duels,
Yeah.
aerially and on the ground, good at interceptions, can carry the ball. He was so good at carrying the ball. If you
Nice.
haven't,
Okay.
go and watch the video that I posted on my Twitter of his performance. So good at carrying the ball, with pace, right, and also the ability to contribute in the final third if needed. He
Cool.
played a lovely. He picked the ball up sort of on his halfway line, ran about 20, 30 yards, slipped a lovely through ball into Jack Morehouse. He took a shot. It missed. The keeper saved it 1v1, but Chido tapped in the rebound. So the goal kind of came from his kind of play.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, but I was really, really impressed with that performance. And like I said, the physical levels are starting to look like they're getting there. And when I spoke to you about his first game, I said that he was miscontrolling the ball quite a bit, and a bit sloppy and things like that. But I said to you that I was willing to look over that, because for me, that was more a case of him needing to play more rather than it being like a
Yeah.
quality issue.
Yes.
And
Yes.
we saw that against Oldham, that he looks like he's starting to rev up the engines, I should say, right? And
Nice.
the only criticism that I had from the game is that he looked like he takes a little bit too long on the ball, like a little bit
Sure.
too many touches, but that can be coached out of him, right? And again,
Yeah.
that could come down to
More
game time as well, just
confidence,
playing
more
more game.
game time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yep.
So for me, in terms of, people have asked me like, who are the players from the academy that you could see for the first team at the end of the season, it'll be Chido and Seku. Like those are the two for
That's what I
me.
figured.
And
Yeah.
I know they're boring picks and they're easy, but for me that's just kind of
But that's why
for
they
me in
got
terms
him,
of
right? I mean, it's like it's,
yeah,
that's a good
we didn't
sign
invest this
that they
money.
look that good. Yeah.
Yeah, and again, we have to factor in the sample size and who's playing against. Obviously, the
Yep.
levels of National League Oldham are going to be different to first team opposition, but
Yep.
really, really excited by his profile. And like I said, it's an interesting topic. I think people have got different opinions on it, but I think he could be a player that could develop into a number 8. At the moment, he's
Sure.
playing kind of like that number 6 role, but I do
Yep.
think he could develop into a good number 8 because like I said in the World Cup within the 17s for Mali, he did show that he does have that final third quality, but he is
Right.
also just very good off the ball as well. So it could be one of those players that we might look back on in 5 or 6 years time and think, wow, we did some really good business there. But the nature of youth football, you just don't know with these sort of players.
Mm.
You just don't know. It could be that in 3 years time he's playing in the French second division. You just don't know.
Right.
And I think that's why it's so exciting. That's why I love
Yeah.
academy football, because you just never know. You just you
Yep.
just don't know. So, but yeah, definitely very, very pleased with his kind of development in his performances, and I'm assuming that he'll play on Friday against Tottenham for the 21s as well, and it'll be
Right.
another. Well, I was going to say it'll be another chance for us to watch him, but unfortunately, it won't be televised. So no, it won't be a chance for us to
Oh, it
watch
won't.
him, unless you
Unfortunately.
can get down to the game. Unless you can get,
Right.
well, for most of us, we can't do that. Obviously, I potentially could. I'd have to travel a long way, but yeah. So yeah, just on Kone, just to finish, just yeah, all in all, very impressed, very happy.
Yeah, but that's very good. Yeah, and it's very exciting, and hopefully we'll see both of them, Kone and Chido by the end of the year, but hopefully in the right time. Just
Yeah.
ideally, not to say it would go poorly if somehow they were needed, but ideally in the right time. And yeah, we will, and that is good, and it seems like good progress is being made. And obviously, yeah, as you said as well, the more games that get played, and we'll get more info and more data, and hopefully they get to have at least some of that correct progression into the first team in the way that we want, and
Mm,
we'll see them develop. And I think the whole point of that, of course, is it gives them the best chance to succeed. But it is interesting because they're two players where I think if you ask people today, they could help solve problems in the first team in
potentially.
positions of need and profile and what they bring. So if they can develop well, there is space for them. There is
Mm.
space in the first team for a striker. There is space in the first team for an all action, midfielder type of player who can be a 6, who could be an 8. Eventually, there's space for these players in the team. We've seen that, and so if they can reach the levels necessary to do it, then that'll be great.
I'm looking at Amass again. I'm just thinking, what are we doing there? He didn't go out on
Yeah.
loan. He didn't go out on loan, and there's been mixed opinions on how he's doing this season. I saw after the City game, I saw quite a lot of negative tweets saying that his development's not gone quite how expected. And I think people are being slightly reactionary on that.
Yeah.
I think he's been fine this season. I think he's been fine. Hasn't maybe played as well as last season, but he's in kind of like this really weird spot at the moment where he's too good for under 18s football. He did play against City the other day. He did drop down to under 18s football. And I saw people say like, this kid was so close to getting a debut for the first team, but now he's playing for the under 18s again. What's going on there? And to explain that, that was a really important game in terms of the title, in terms of, so that's why he played that game. I would say that there's no other reason. That for me was why he played that under 18s game. It's not because they think that he's not developing very well. It's just that they dropped him down because they want the best players available for that really important game. It's why Chido played, right? Um, so yeah, but Malasia's gone on loan. Anthony's gone on loan. Shaw has obviously picked up another injury allegedly, right?
Yes,
So
unfortunately.
yeah, and obviously Dorgu's come in, right? But I'm just looking at him and thinking, why have we kept him and got rid of all these players if we haven't sent him out on loan? I just don't quite get it because, like I said, he's one of those players. We've sent most of our academy players on loan to National League sides and League Two sides. That's kind of where we sent most of them. But I truly for me personally, believe Amass could be someone that you send into the championship. I really do believe that. I think he's got the qualities. Um, I had reservations when he was coming through at the time we were playing four at the back. I had reservations about the way he received the ball and the angles that he would get himself into, and I was worried about maybe that's why he wasn't coming into the first team, because he might be like a trigger press, that because
Hmm.
sometimes he receives it a bit awkwardly and sometimes gets himself into tricky situations. And for the under 18s, he's able to kind of like dribble out of those kind of scenarios because he was quite physical, quite athletic, and quite
Yeah.
sharp. So he's able to kind of get out of those scenarios, but maybe not so fortunate in the first team. And I was just wondering, maybe is that why they're holding him back a little bit, with obviously the physical
Right.
concerns as well. But with
Yeah.
the three at the back, he'd be higher up the pitch, right? So he wouldn't
True.
kind of
Yes.
be
Less
put in those
risky. Yeah.
scenarios. So I'm just wondering,
Hmm.
would he be someone as well? Because
Yeah. I
clearly
mean,
clearly clearly he was rated, because he wouldn't be on the bench for the first team for so many occasions, right? Like,
yeah.
he wasn't just in the squad once; he was in the squad quite a few times. And okay, yes, he never came on. Um, but yeah, I'm just wondering, will he be someone that comes through? I'm just that I would say, for me personally, as someone that's watched the academy for the, I would say Chido, Kone, Amass. Those are the ones that I would predict, if they're going to get any minutes, they'll be those three. I'm just really, I might do some digging actually. I
Yeah.
might be cheeky and ask some people what's going on there, because I'm confused by it all. Really,
Yeah,
really
it
am.
is a little bit. That one has always been a little bit confusing and a little bit befuddling. So, be good to know. But great. Yeah, I mean, I think that about covers everything we wanted to do
Sure.
here, and hopefully it's very enlightening for everybody in terms of what could happen and different views on what should happen with these young players. So we'll just have to see. We'll just have to see where they go in the next few weeks. I mean, there's going to be no more additions to the first team, so we'll start to find out if how they see them, over the course of the
Mm,
season. And then might be a positive of the whole thing is that we've mentioned this before, but with the way that the Premier League is going, that come April, May, there might be the perfect opportunity, frankly, in about as low pressure as it gets for a team like United to get some youth players involved in the
yeah.
first team. When if we're sat around mid-table, as sad as that is, it's the perfect opportunity to do it. You're safe from
Mm.
relegation. You're not. You're focused on the cups. You're focused on the FA Cups. You're focused on the Europa League and that's your route back into Europe. And you think might as well plan for the future.
You know that what photo I came across the other day was, I think it was Mourinho, the last game before the end of the season at Old Trafford, where Josh Harrop scored. Do you remember that game? I think it was against Crystal Palace. Do you remember that game?
Yeah, I do. I do.
And at the end of the game, there was a massive squad photo of all the academy players. There was
Yes.
Rashford, there was Angel
Yes.
Gomez,
Yes.
there's
Yes.
McTominay. I think Pogba maybe was in there as well, and just all the academy players that had played or were in the squad that day. Because I think Mourinho had put a lot of players on the bench that day. I would love to see something like that towards the end of the season. I would love it. Just even if they're not quite ready, just fill the bench with academy players and see if you can give someone, a sort of moment to remember for the rest of their careers. I'd love to see that, like you said, because the stakes aren't particularly high at the moment with the first team. So if
Yeah.
you can give players
Yep.
the opportunity, why not? If
Yeah.
that'd be a special day,
It would.
and and people overlook the importance of these sort of things, that those kind of moments and photos and things like that, they can have ripple effects, right? And
Yes.
you don't want to like fake that you can give players opportunities. I don't think that's something that we ever do. I think that's something that some other clubs have done. um, I truly think that if you're a player at United, the pathway is there. That's the most important thing. But it's about
Yes.
reminding people that the pathway is there. And I think if we go the entire season and not using the academy in certain scenarios, I think that would be a bit damning on the club. Regardless of the environment the club's in, I do think there are opportunities for the remainder of the season in certain games where we could just bring players on or put them on the bench. And I'd love to see that at the end of the season. And I think having a photo like that, like I said, like we did before, it can have big impacts, right? If you see, for example, if
Yep.
you had Kobe, Garnacho, Chido, Kukonki, just a big group photo of any of sort of any academy players involved in the game. That'd be great, and players would look up to that,
Yeah. Yeah.
And just to finish it on a
Absolutely.
good point, if
Yeah.
anyone's still watching, our
We will.
under 18s lost to City 4-0, but our under 16s beat City 6-2.
That's
So
pretty
have
good.
that, City. Have that.
So more future is bright. More future is bright.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll leave it there and put this out. And again, make sure you follow Academy Reunited on X and Twitter and whatever you have it, and on Instagram and such as well. I know you post a fair bit there too. So I'll make sure to tag them in everything there. And otherwise, thanks for coming on again, and we'll do it again. We've got more to
Thanks for
talk
having me.
about. Of course.
Great.
Bye, everybody.